Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video we'll be looking at testing the create API view, detail API view, and the delete or the destroy API view as it's named in the Django-rest framework. In the last video we looked at setting up Django-rest framework and doing some basic testing on the list API view. So together with the create, detail, and destroy API views, these are usually called the generic API views, and that's what we'll be finishing in this video. The next video we'll be looking at the plain API views, which is very customizable. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the code. Okay, so just wait for this to boot up. So because we've already done majority of the testing, we are going to start with the create API view. So I'm just going to copy this, the student list API view, and I'm going to call it student create API view, and this is going to inherit from create. Let's import this. We have the create API view, minimize that. So create API view, like so. And it's going to use the same serializer. It's okay, I don't want to modify the serializer a lot, so we can just use the same thing over and over again. I'm also going to copy this, and I'm going to say student detail. I'm going to create them again. Is the same thing, copy, paste, so that becomes student delete API view. So of course we need to import detail destroy API view, and the other one is called detail. Is it not detail? Okay, just a second. I can come here to django-rest-framework, generic views. Let's see what it is called. It's retrieve API view. Okay, just going to push this to the side. This is retrieve API view, so make sure this is retrieve API view, and then for student delete, this one becomes destroy API view. Okay, so we need to quickly set up the URLs for this. So I'm going to open this on the side. Actually, I'm going to split my tab. So just push this like so. Just push it a little bit. So the first one we are going to create is for the student, but instead of list we say student create. That's not how we spell create. And this one is going to inherit from, need to import student create API view. We also need to import the student delete API view, and we also need to import the student detail API view. Okay, so for the student create, this one we need this view, and we are going to call it student create API. Again, your namespaces, your names here should be unique, so that when you do a reverse you don't get an error. So then we are going to have student detail, but it takes one extra argument. Actually, we are not going to say detail, we're just going to say here, usually when you do a detail we must pass a foreign key, so we are going to say int pk. So what this means is that we want to pass in a unique integer, so let's say /1, and that integer is going to come from the primary key field or the ID field. You can just say pk or ID, like so. So this is a create. I can come and copy the same and paste it here. Then I want to do student delete API view, call this delete. And the way I like doing it is that we can take the same URL as the student create and we pass in the delete. Actually this is supposed to be student detail. Yeah, so that means if we have like 5 students, if you want to find the detail of one student, it will be student/1 for the student with ID of 1 or /2 for the student with ID of 2. So we usually take the same concept and pass in /. If you want to delete, let's say, student with a primary key of 5, it will be student/5/delete, or you can put anything you want here. This is just the way I like doing it. Okay, so that seems okay. So one of the things we can do is to test if all these URLs work. So I'm going to open here my terminal. I'm going to activate my control. I'm going to activate my environment. I'm going to run server. Okay, student cannot contain white space. Okay, so there's a white space here, so between int and pk. Let's see if that gets resolved. Restart the server. I'm going to close this view. It says delete also. For all of them we need to remove that white space. Okay, run server. Everything works. So what I'm going to come is open localhost. I'm going to come to /API /API /student/create, and if we do that, it gives us a form here. We can either put raw data in JSON format or HTML. So I can come here and fill in with my details. I can say username is Geoff. I can, or leave it blank. Actually this is not required, we can even leave it blank. Admission number, this is required. We say 1 2 3 4 5. We say is qualified, and we say the average score is, let's say, 97, because why not. And I can post this, and once you post, you find that it comes up here. Another thing we can do, we can add another username. I'm going to say maybe Agnes, and we give her a second name of maybe Wangari. So username, we are just going to leave it blank, and admission number is 1 2 3 4 5 6. Average score, we say 98. So we post, and now Agnes gets created and a correct username gets created. So this means if we now come to our list component, which was API, for what we did the previous videos, / I think there was a student / list, we should see the 2 students. So this means it works. So this means that our create URL is working. Let's look at detail. So that means, oops, we need to go back to the browser. So that means if we come to student, then we say, for example, Agnes, or we come to student number 3, we get Agnes. If we go to student number 2, supposed to get the previous one, and 1 is, I think, is the guy we created with emojis. Yeah, Geoffrey with an emoji. So we can see here is API student / student / the primary key, and this is giving us the detail. Let's try to delete 1. Okay, I need to close this PowerPoint, it's annoying. So that means if I want to delete number 2, if we want to delete this guy, I'm just going to come here and add delete. Okay, and it's going to give me here option to delete. I say delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Delete. Okay, and now if we come to primary key number 2, there's nothing. But if we go to primary key number 3, there's Agnes. If we go 1, it's Geoffrey with an emoji. So this is manual testing. Again, this is what we are trying to avoid, but I'm trying to do that so that you can see the logic. So what we are now going to do is actually write the test so that we can do these tests automatically. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to come to our test views, minimize that as well. So we did the, need to format this document first of all, format document so that everything is proper. So I want to test the, we start with create, then we do detail, then we do delete. Okay, so of course we want to test that student create works. So the first thing of course we need is the first step is generating the data. So remember here when we were doing it manually, I'm just going to come here and do create. We had this form to fill or to fill in the raw data, and we were hitting post. So actually what I'm going to come is copy this. So we need to recreate this in our tests basically. So I'm going to come and say maybe data required. You can call this whatever you want, and we can say we need to fill in this data. We need a first name. So here I'm just going to generate random names. So we can say test, or no, let's give actual names. So first name I'm going to say Wangari, then last name I'm going to say Mathai. Username we can leave it blank. Admission number, this is required, so admission number I'm going to say is 9876. Is qualified, we say true. Average score, I think we can put this one to be 100 because why not? Okay, so we have what the data required. So the second thing that we need, we don't need to create this. So we need to reverse the URL. So, and the URL we want to reverse is student create API, and just to confirm is student create API, because oops, this one needs to be student detail, they need to be unique, and this is delete. So we need to reverse this student create. Super. So student create, we need to call the URL, but here now the difference is coming. Previously we were getting the list. Let me just open that so that we can see when we are doing the list, and this is the test we are doing in the previous lesson, getting student list. Remember here it's saying is a HTTP 200 okay, and this is what we tested here. The status code was 200. Also the browser tells us it's a get method. That's why in our code we did self.client.get. Yeah, so notice these two things. It's JSON format, that's why we were doing response.json, and everything is linked up. And okay, here we are just accepting anything, there's no okay. But now if we come to create, you realize that it's telling us we need a post method. So this means instead of saying now in this create, instead of saying get, we are going to .client.post, and post is telling us that we need a path and we need data. Okay, so the path is a URL, and the data that we need to pass is the data required. And again, you can call it this anything. You can say input data. Actually, let's call it input data so that it can make much more sense. Input data or input data, like so. I don't think for now we need anything else. Okay, so here I don't need to do this. We need to do some assertions here. So again, the basic ones, we said we want to assert that response.json is not none. We want, here we are not measuring any length. Okay, so but I think another thing we can be able to do is test this response status code. Okay, so for now let's just test this. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to quit this, and I'm going to run Pytest. In the future videos, I'm going to introduce you some Pytest settings and plugins that enable us to run newly written tests, so that it doesn't have to test all of these tests before we test what we want. But for now, let's test everything. Okay, so here it's giving us an error. 201 is not equal to 200, and I was expecting this to fail, and this is because of one thing. Whenever we create an object through a form or whatever in the web, usually return a 201, and 201 status code means something has been created. So yeah, 201 created. Again, one of the things that perhaps I didn't cover a lot, and I think this is covered well in the Django-rest-framework documentation, is status. We'll be doing this in the next video. So status codes. So there's a lot of status codes. There's a 200 series status codes. That means it's 200 okay, 201 created. We have the 300s for the redirects. We have the 403s. We have 404s. We have the 500s for server errors. I think there's somewhere on the web where all these status codes are usually listed. Let me try to look again. Status codes. Yeah, so we have the 100s, but most of the time in a programming career you'll be using the 200s. So here we'll mostly be using 200 and 201 created. We can decide to do 202 accepted. This is where perhaps you are receiving some JSON and you want to verify it. We'll be using a couple of 300s, but mostly we'll also cover the 400s in our tests, and 500s are usually server errors. That one we are not going to do any tests on that. Okay, so I knew this one is supposed to be 201, like so. And now if we run Pytest, another way we can try to find out if this student has been created, we can actually do a assert, and we can do a query set, and we say student dot objects dot all, and this is going to give us the query set of everything, and we can do a length. Actually, there's a function in Django called count. So instead of doing dot all, then doing what we were doing previously, like doing the length of that, there's an inbuilt method dot objects dot count, and what this does is count all the elements in this query set, and we want to make sure that this is equals to 1. Okay, so response dot status code is 201. Another thing that perhaps we can do, I'm going to print so that you can see. I'm going to print response dot data, and I want to make this fail, so I'm going to say this is 3. The reason I'm doing the response dot data, remember here we've sent a username which is blank, and we expect when the student gets created, this one will get automatically generated. So let's see if that actually happens. So I'm going to run that again. Okay, of course it was expecting 1 and we give it 3, but we only did that so that it can fail. Yes, and here now if you come here to look, you will find that the username has actually been generated. So that means that we've been able to successfully create this student. Another thing is that if now we say here is equals to 1, actually there's a command called -k in Pytest, and we can do create. Let's see if this is going to, I'm just shooting in the dark. Okay, so what -k means, what this command means is -k. Let me just first of all clear this. So when, if I do, let's say Pytest -k, k means run the command that contains the following words, and let's say I can say create, what did we call this? Create, I can say, for example, student create. It doesn't have to be the entire word, so it's going to search all the tests that has these words in their title. So like this is one, I don't think we have another one, and it's going to find one test. So this is another way where you can only run one test if you want. Again, advantage of Pytest. And now we can see that, you know, our specific test is passing. Okay, now let's go to, I'm going to copy this as it is, and let's go and do, we test the detail student detail. So this one we don't need any input data. What we need to create using mixer. So this one we need just to create a couple of students or even one student. So I'm just going to copy that. So okay, so we want to reverse student detail API. This one is going to be a get, so we don't need this. Okay, so we want to assert that response.json is, of course, it's something. Okay, and we want to assert this is a 200. We want to assert a couple of, this is redundant, so I want to assert okay, so this one won't work out of, let me just show you what I mean. There's something we need to pass here. So if I do -k student detail, expect this to fail, because one of the things is that this URL, which is the detail API, it's going to say Django URLs exception, no reverse match, reverse for student detail API with no arguments not found. So it's saying there's no arguments in this URL. Remember, in this URL, for both for detail and for delete, we are passing in a value here, so it cannot be blank. And I don't want to do, ideally if you were hard coding this, we could have said /API/student/ let's say 1. So for example, if I do this and I run this command again, let me see, API student 1 not found, is not a valid view or pattern name. Let's see, what is the URL? API student. Okay, guess that is wrong, but let's do it the correct way. So usually here what happens is that you pass in the URL, you put a comma, then we pass in an object that contains quags is equals to, and we say, is it this way? I believe is we say quags is equals to an object, and we say pk is equals to 1. I believe this is the way it's written. Fingers crossed. If not, we are just going to do a quick Google. Okay, it's saying pk is not defined. Let's try to make that as a string. Okay, now our URL is passing. So, and just to make sure that print, we need to print the URL. I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to make sure here that the test is failing so that we see what the URL is. Again, we pass in this quags argument so that we can pass in this value. So if we had other values here, let's say a string of, let's say, admission number or something / another variable, then we would pass all of them inside these quags or keyword arguments. So if I decide to run this, it's going to come. So now we do response. So another thing we can do now is actually assert that when we need to assert that we need to find this student, we can say response.json first name, and we need to make sure that this is Geoffrey, like so. And just to make sure that this also, we can say username, we expect it to be small. So this will mean that we've actually created that and it's gone through. Okay, run that. Another thing we can do is that we can replicate this. We can say response to, and I'm going to call this and say we can have the second URL, and here we pass in the primary key of 2 because this one is going to create this student. So we can do assert that just going to copy these two like so, bear with me, and we can say, again, it's usually not advisable to do a lot of asserts in the same test, but I'm just doing this so that it can make sense. So we can say response to.json. So here we are making two requests. We are making first, we are getting the first student here. We are getting the second student because we are passing in the PK of 2. So I expect this to be Naomi, and I expect this to be okay. So if we now run this test, oh, this is going to fail. This needs to be 200. Okay, I expect that to pass. So oops, what is happening? Dict object has no attribute first name. Let's see. This is so it seems it's failing here. Response.json. I need to print this. To see what is giving me. Okay, let's do this. I need to name this. Again, this is the advantage of using print statement. Response JSON. Yeah, it's showing me as a dictionary. Okay, let's try to do this. The other way. Remove the dots. Again, we do that. Sometimes working between JavaScript and Python is a bit confusing, so when I do some of those things, it means, again, assertion error, Geoffrey is not equals to Naomi. Okay, let's see where the error is coming from. Response to.json. This needs to be URL2. This needs to be URL2. So actually, so that I don't confuse it, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to take the student 2 and I'm going to paste it here so that everything is bundled together. And I'm actually just going to cut that. No, let it just return there. Yeah, so that we first get the first student, the URL and the response. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to group them like so. So student 1, the second student, and the response, then we do the assertions. And now I'm hopeful that when we run this, it should now pass. Okay, so it passes. So the third thing we are going to do is now just come and test the delete API view. This should be pretty straightforward. We are only going to use one student, so we don't need this. So this needs to be student. We first create a what is happening here? Yeah, this needs to be delete. So here it needs to be student delete API. Quags is the same. We pass in the PK of 1 of the student want to delete. Response, we get that. Assert, I think this should be none. I think this should be equal to none because we delete, I'm assuming so. Okay, this needs to be 200. We don't need to have this. Just going to highlight them out. Let's see if this is going to work. Oops, I'm running the old test, so I need to run student delete. Fingers crossed. I've actually, now that I realize, I've never actually done a delete API view. It's saying assert detail method get is not allowed, so it's saying here we are not supposed to do a get. I wonder what we are supposed to do. Client dot delete. I think there's supposed to be a delete. Let's see. Yeah, there's supposed to be a client.delete, and we are supposed to pass in the URL. So I believe if we come here to this, instead of post, whenever we want to delete something, let me just run my server. It's supposed to be not a put or a get, it's supposed to be a delete. So student 1 and delete. Yes, the method here is delete method. Okay, so we run the Pytest command, student delete. Let's see. Okay, it's saying status code of 204, expected a string or byte-like object. Okay, let's see where the error is. Line 103, print response. Okay, we don't need to have. Okay, let me just remove that. Let me test the status code. So it's returning a 204. Let's look at 204. What is a 204? No content. Okay, not sure if this is what we should be receiving. Okay, I want to print response. Let me just dir. Again, this might be correct because for create we have a 201. This one is suggesting that perhaps we need to have a 204. Again, I've never actually done delete API views before. This is the first time I'm experiencing it. But let's see. I want to print the response so that I can see what is included there. I need to make this fail, so I'm going to say 201 run the test again. I see that time is really running out, so we should be winding up. This is response. Okay, so we have request readable is rendered, content type content. We actually have JSON, so I don't know why it was giving us some weird errors. Response.json. Okay, quags pk is equals to 1 self.client.delete url student delete API, which is delete API. This works. Okay, let's see if we have, what else can we copy here to see? Let's see the status code. Okay, run the test. So it's giving us and this is what is making it to crash. Okay, so it's expecting a 204. This just needs to be response code. Okay, I'm just going to do this just to finalize this, but I'm going to do more research to see if 204 is what is required. So because here the assertion is yeah, 204. Okay, okay, we don't need to do this because it has deleted. Actually, what we can do is this. I can come here and say, don't know why I had not thought of that. I can say student dot objects dot count and expect this to be 0. I expect there to be no students. Okay, so if I run this, this should pass. If it's not passed, then it means that the student is still there. Correct? Because if I come here after just creating the student, we can assert that first of all the student is 1, then we delete the student, then the students become 0 in the database. So let's do this and it should pass. Okay, hooray, everything works perfectly. I think we've covered the 3 things that we wanted to cover today. So in the next video, we'll be looking at API views, and these are very customizable views, not the generic. So far, we've been using the out-of-the-box generic API, generic list API, create, destroy, and retrieve. But in the next one, we'll be using API views, which is very customizable. We're also going to look at custom status codes. We're also going to look at headers. Then the video after that will look at authentication. Again, if you're finding me for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. The code is in GitHub and is in the description below. Please also make sure to check out my website where the entire of this course is free and there's additional material in terms of code that is written there on my website. Please make sure to support the channel and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.